May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke audio podcast. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today is the last memory of Shunryu Suzuki from the Haiku Zendo Chronicles, published in 1973 out of the Los Altos Zen Center, which for quite a number of years was practicing at the Haiku Zendo in Marion Durbin's home. So this is a memory from Les Kaye, who took over Marion Derby's home with his wife, Mary, who was the last one. And Les became the abbot, and he's still the abbot. And so here's what he had to say back then in 1973. It is still difficult for me to believe that Suzuki Roshi accepted me so readily and completely as one of his disciples. I know now that it stemmed from his open and compassionate nature and his full acceptance of all persons. However, like other Los Altos students, I didn't see him very often and felt hesitant in approaching him or in taking any of his time. He belonged to the Zen Center, I thought, and we were lucky enough to see him once in a while. When I did go to him to speak about becoming ordained, I went with a hesitant, cautious feeling. We exchanged greetings and became silent. He asked me why I wanted to be ordained. I gave him a reason that was not very profound, but rather ordinary. Without a word, he stood up, went into the other room, and came back with a tape measure and, "Oh-san, Mrs. Suzuki." They immediately began measuring me for robes. I let them turn me, tape me, hold my arms out, and listened to them discuss the finer details of tailoring for the next hour. I left in kind of a daze, not being sure when my ordination would take place, only that it takes a few months for the robes to come from Japan. Suzuki Roshi was always at the center of things. He did not need words to understand a situation. He could take it in instantly, hardly without observing it. He had a great kindness and never hesitated to go someplace or do something when requested. He always had that wisdom that enabled him to say the words or do the thing necessary at the moment. As an example of this attitude, I remember how he handled a particularly anxious moment at my ordination in January 1971. The ceremony had begun, and we were crowded together in the Los Altos Zendo when my mother arrived. She was obviously nervous, anxious about the strange, unorthodox step her son was taking, and finding all eyes on her as she entered the Zendo, late. I'll never forget Roshi's eyes glancing at her as she entered and took the seat someone offered her near the platform. Very gently he reached over, put his hand on her shoulders, and said, "You came at the right time." So I became one of his disciples, but I didn't visit Zen Center very often, again for fear of disturbing him or taking his valuable time, but I made a point to see him at least once every 3 months. I didn't want to run to him with problems, but I did want to be with him occasionally, and I decided to tell him about whatever was of greatest concern to me at the time. I wasn't really sure of all the formalities and once asked if we were having Dokusan. He said it was just a student visiting and having tea with his teacher. In every way, he let things take their own natural course without pushing. He provided encouragement when he had the opportunity, as he always invited me to come back but never said should or set a date. It was up to me. I realize now that I could have visited him twice a week or more if I had wanted to. Suzuki Roshi had a sense of humor. He was always smiling. He easily laughed at even the smallest bit of whimsy. Whether at a fancy party prepared in his honor or eating the simplest meal at Zen Center, he gave the impression of enjoying himself tremendously. Roshi was also a little mischievous. Once when we were at Tassajara, my wife, who is a bonsai enthusiast, found an oak tree and dug it up. She eagerly showed it to Roshi, who said, "Oh, thank you very much," and took it away, leaving Mary open-mouthed. Katagiri Roshi once asked Mary and me if our Zendo was ready for its own teacher. We thought about it, discussed it with others, and later told him we were ready. We asked him what to do, and he said to see Suzuki Roshi for advice on who to invite. I spoke to Suzuki Roshi about Katagiri Roshi's suggestion, and he proposed that we invite Kobun Chino Sensei to return to the United States to be with the Los Altos group. Months later, after Chino Sensei arrived, became our teacher, it dawned on me that the whole thing was planned by Suzuki Roshi with the help of Katagiri Roshi. Catching two birds with one stone, getting Kobun and making us independent. He worked it so that we did the soul-searching decision-making and made the necessary step. It has worked out perfectly. Suzuki Roshi died a little less than a year after my ordination. I sometimes regret not being able to be with him physically anymore, but then I think of how lucky I've been just to have known him for however brief a time and to have been accepted by him so completely. His memory fills me completely. I try to do things with his spirit in mind, not because he is watching, but because he trusts me. He trusted everybody before he met them. So that's great, Les Kaye. Thank you very much. Yeah. Suzuki wanted to, this is my opinion, he wanted Les to be ordained. He wanted Les to be the teacher there. Les was not part of, when he says Zen Center, he meant Page Street. You know, when I go to Zen Center, he means the city center. Zen Center was really the organization that had the city center and Tassajara. I don't remember right now at which point it changed its name to the San Francisco Zen Center because all these other Zen centers were popping up. But Les he wasn't part of the larger community, really. I mean, we knew him to say hello. He'd come to Tassajara sometimes. But he was part of the Los Altos Zendo. That's where he was anchored, and that's where he stayed. And also, he was from a very different subculture. He felt he was not accepted by people because he worked for IBM, for many years. But I don't agree with that. I think it's because he didn't have a single iota of hypnosis. He had not come out of the peace, love, dove, acid thing. Not everybody had. He hadn't come out of just, a lot of people hadn't come out of that, had been involved with Asian studies and Alan Watts and this and that. So Les Kaye was sort of like out of left field. But the thing to me that was key about it, I didn't think that mattered at all. But I felt he was sort of discriminated against socially. But groups do that. They do it unconsciously. But the important thing was he was steady. I just thought, it is obvious this guy's the right guy to ordain. He's going to stick with it. He's not mercurial. He's got a very strong sense of responsibility. He doesn't have all sorts of wild plans. He'll be happy to be just there where he is. And he's done a great job, and he's been very consistent and steadfast. So I admire Les. Okay. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. The last of the Haiku Zendo Chronicles. You can go to cuke.com and write Haiku Zendo Chronicles, or probably just Haiku Zendo, on the site search box, and you can read the whole thing over again. I have now read the entire thing, and I've enjoyed it. It's been good. I don't know how many podcasts has it taken. This is the 29th one, and it's just a little pamphlet, that was published by them. So thank you, Haiku Zendo Chronicles. Thank you, Barbara Heiston, for putting this book together. Thank you all the people who contributed your memories. And until we meet again, this is DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sonor with Doga Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.